Well, today is our third strategy out of 4 strategies for solving quadratic equations, and I think it's probably the most popular and the most well-known, probably the most used. It is the quadratic formula. Now, the quadratic formula is great because you can solve any quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. Like, for instance, if it's not factorable, you can use the quadratic formula. You can use the quadratic formula for problems that you would normally use the square root method. So the quadratic formula is really versatile, and I guess let's get started. So first, you're going to make sure that everything is arranged on one side of your equation, or in other words, you're going to make sure that your equation equals 0. So first step, get everything to one side of your equation. Next, when you use the quadratic formula, you need to know what your a value, your b value, and your c value is. So the second step is going to be to identify your a, b, and c values. So over in our quadratic over here, you'll notice that our a value is 1, or in other words, our leading coefficient is 1. Our b value is 4, and our c value is 3. Next, now we're going to plug our a value, our b value, and our c value into the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula is really quirky. You're probably going to think I literally just made it up on the fly because it's a little complex and just doesn't really look like anything you've ever seen before. So here's the quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. See what I mean? Looks like I made it up. All right, so let's go over to our equation and start plugging in some of these values. So first, our solution x will equal negative b, and our b value is 4, so this will be negative 4, plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is 4, minus 4 times our a value, 1, times our c value, 3. And that whole thing is divided by 2 times our a value, which is 1. Next, we'll start to evaluate this piece by piece. So it's negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 4 squared is 16, and 4 times 1 times 3 is 12. So 16 minus 12 will be 4, and this is all over 2 times 1, which is 2. You may notice this is a quadratic equation, so we could either have 2 solutions, 1 solution, or no solutions. It appears right now that we're going to have 2 solutions because we do have a nice plus or minus sign in here, so let's see what happens. So x equals negative 4 plus 2, which is negative 2, divided by 2, which will be negative 1. So x equals negative 1. And then x will also equal negative 4 minus 2, which is negative 6, divided by 2, which is negative 3. So x equals negative 1 and x equals negative 3 because we have 2 x-intercepts for this quadratic equation. Let's take a look at another. All right, so we got our second problem here, and the first thing we need to do is just make sure everything is on one side of our equation. So that would give us 4b squared plus 8b. Take away 4 from both sides would be plus 3 equals 0. Next, we have to identify our a value, b value, and c value. A is 4, B is 8, C is 3. Now we can use the quadratic formula. X, or I guess in this case B, but it is an x-intercept. So x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all over 2 times a. Now we'll just kind of evaluate this in pieces. So our x-intercepts are going to be negative 8 plus or minus. 8 squared is 64. 4 times 4 times 3 is 16 times 3, which is 48. 64 minus 48 is 16. And that's all over 8. It looks like this quadratic will have 2 solutions. So I'll set up space for 2 solutions here. Our first solution is going to be negative 8 plus 4, which is negative 4, divided by 8. Negative 4 divided by 8 is negative 1/2. And our second solution is going to be negative 8 minus 4, which is negative 12, divided by 8. Negative 12 divided by 8 is going to be negative 3 over 2. And so our solutions to this quadratic equation would be negative 1/2 and negative 3/2. Let's try a third one. All right, so I chose number 4 instead of number 3, just to kind of mix it up a little bit. So I want to get everything to one side. So it will be 2x squared minus 3x minus 5 equals 0. That means your a value is 2, your b value is negative 3, and your c value is negative 5. Then of course you use the quadratic formula. So our x-intercept will equal negative b, but because b is already negative, it will actually be positive 3 plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is negative 3, so negative 3 squared minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is negative 5, all over 2 times a, which is 2 times 2. Then I'm just going to evaluate it in chunks. So it will be 3 plus or minus the square root of, let's see, negative 3 squared is negative 3 times negative 3, which is 9. And then over here, 4 times 2 times negative 5 will be 8 negative 40, so it'll be 9 minus negative 40, which is 49, all over 4. Three plus 7 is 10. 10 divided by 4 is 5 over 2. 3 minus 7 is negative 4. Negative 4 divided by 1 is negative 4 divided by 4 is negative 1. So our 2 solutions are 5/2 and negative 1. All right, good luck. Go ahead and try the remaining problems by yourself.